So, happy to be here. I'm Widenius, everybody calls me Monty. I'm very sorry that I'm here offline and you just can't enjoy me online, but still there is some place for the offline parts. So I was asked to have a talk about how to become an entrepreneur, what got me to do the different things I did, why I created MySQL, and so on. And I will not talk about everything on the slide, so I will assume that everybody who can will be able to read English, or if not, you just have to translate to the person beside you. So this is actually the 20th years anniversary of MySQL and PHP. We actually have an internal release 95, public in 96. It's a long project. I worked on this 34 years. Still about 60% of the code, if the main server is my handwriting. MariaDB is 66 years, and I just turned 53. A little bit of history in pictures. One of the reasons I created MySQL and I made it open source was that I wanted to travel and see interesting people in interesting places. This is my first time in Siberia, so I'm very happy to be here. I've been around 20 times in different parts of Russia and former Russia. So this is in 1999. We were traveling in Madagascar with My, who were my oldest daughter, who gave the name to MySQL. And I have worked from home since 1982. So I know a lot about the pleasures of not having to travel to work every day. And when you start a company, usually things goes very good in the beginning if you have a good idea of what you are doing. I also have a son, Max, so we also had a MaxDB product, and we also had a MySQL Max version with lots of features enabled. When you create a company, sooner or later you have to talk with the investors and you get problems of growing, so there's some growing pains. And those who know the MySQL history, at some point we come into quite strange company, and some of us got a little bit scared what will happen. But fortunately there's somebody who can continue. Said here you have Me for MySQL, and Maria, who gave, my youngest, who gave the name to MariaDB. So Me, not MySQL anymore, to kind of leisure and spent a couple of years traveling around the world in South America and Asia. She's just now at a part study in Hawaii. But the question, how about the next generation? Can you really do a success again? It's a really hard job to do what you once did all over again. It's a little like taking a rabbit out of the hat. I like this picture because before I was inclined to work with computers, I really like magic, and I probably would have become a magician or somebody who would hunt people who would hunt animals in Africa. But we're quite confident we can pull it off. By the way, this picture on the left side, I got forbidden to use that in US because people were so upset. How can you put a gun in the hands of a child? And every time I show this picture, I made it very clear. It's not about the gun, it's about the confidence. Look at her face, she can tackle anything. And that's what we're doing with MariaDB. So when I come here, I was asked a little about the early years and why I got into computers. And I created this slide just to show that my first programmable unit had 52 bytes of memory. I could do actually a lot of things in that in 75. The first computer I got to touch my hands on was an ABC-80, a Swedish computer. And back then, it cost about 1 month of salary. And I asked my father, hey, I really, really would like to have this one. And he said that you can't afford that, but if you can get half the money, then I will put up the other half. So I put asphalts on the streets in Helsinki. While coming here to Siberia, I could see that I could have even done a better job here. And I got this ABC. And the reason I choose that, because it has the fastest BASIC of all the computers I could get my hands on. You had PET and Apple II there, but they were very, very slow computers. All like the fascination of doing things fast. And I very quickly outgrew the BASIC, and I wrote a lot of games, actually clones of games in assembler for the computer. And back then I couldn't afford assembler or a debugger, so I wrote a hex editor and wrote all this in hex. And these guys who created the ABC80, they were impressed when they saw what I had. So they said that I will get the new one, ABC800, if I would adopt the games to that one, which I did. And then I got up to 32K of memory, which I thought was pretty amazing back then. I wrote a lot of stuff: word processor, hard disk controllers, tape backup software, actually multitasking of operating system, all in assembler, and most of those without a debugger. And the nice thing when you write things without a debugger and you create software you download to a memory chip, it just has to work the first time, because if it doesn't work, you have no clue of where things went wrong. And I'm very happy to hear that you're still teaching assembler and doing things with hardware, because writing correct software the first time and doing it efficiently, it's a kind of a lost art. So I then started, just before going to university, I started a summer job at Tapio-Laakso, converting all programs from COBOL to BASIC. What I then noticed was that most of the programs were very similar. Basically, you do a screen, then you put something that needs to be stored, and then you have another set of programs where you basically print out the information that you have stored. And at about the same time, Alan Larsson, the third founder of MySQL, asked me that, hey, here's a database program that we should use for satisfying some of our possible customers. I just thought that this program was way too complex to use. So I told him that I could probably do something better in a couple of weeks. And he said that, prove it. And I did prove it by sending him 1.5 weeks later the first prototype of Unireg, the code that actually became MySQL. It's basically an editor that you just painted on the screen how you wanted to put in your data, and then you basically created a database and you could search input, and then I did a similar program later where you could just print your report and it could then output things in different formats. I also met David Axmark, who is the second founder of MySQL. And we started to work together based on this one program. And I would never have been able to do this program if I hadn't worked with Tapio-Laakso and created this program that all looked almost the same. And that's kind of the normal thinking of entrepreneur. You see that this is stupid, you can do it much better, and then you just decide to do it. But you couldn't do this if you didn't have experience of working it in the first time. So I started to work with the program, expanding it. I started to work with some Swedish company that did statistics, big data back then for energy companies in Sweden, and also market companies, and we were following how people were buying stuff. I had then a Sun Spark station, 24 megabyte of memory from a couple of meg. That was sounding was amazing. And then we are coming to the SQL part, where at 92, some of the customers said that you have a really good database, really fast, but we need to have this data more easily accessible. So I started to see that how can we make accessible. The World Wide Web was just coming, and I realized that HTML is very easy to embed a language like SQL inside HTML. So I added an SQL interface to Unireg. I wrote an ODBC connector, also modified a Perl and PHP connector to work with MySQL. And we released it under dual license and almost open source. This was before open source. And then we worked on this for 5 years. We took in investors. I have the agreement with SAP here because that was the first big agreement we got with a big company. And that was in 2003. We made MySQL work with SAP, which back then was something that would have made us one of the biggest big databases that people would use. Oracle got to hear about that and bought the MariaDB engine, and SAP kind of stopped working with us after that. So the only reason Oracle interfered with us because they got scared of what we were doing. But that didn't stop us commercially. We were still able to sell ourselves to Sun for $1 billion, and that's probably still the biggest open source sale that has been made. And I become part of Sun. I worked for Sun for 1 year because I actually thought that Sun would be the perfect company that would own MySQL, but I will come back to that later. And I left after 1 year because there were lots of people within the MySQL engineering who didn't like working in a big company. Lots of rules, you didn't have the freedom, you had management who was telling you stupid things. So they said that they will leave, and I did an agreement with Sun. I will leave Sun, I will employ these people, and we work with Sun like we still would be a part of Sun. So they wouldn't lose these people, because the only way an open source project can die if you lose the engineers who knows it, because still it's some millions of rows of line, and it's almost impossible to put in new people in such a complex code, especially if you don't have the original people there explaining why this code was written in this way. But 1 month later, Oracle announced that they will acquire Sun. And instead of starting to work with Sun, we started to work on MariaDB. And I will go to details with that. I created the MariaDB Foundation a little bit later. Now we are in quite good position that MariaDB has replaced MySQL in almost all distributions. And I also created SkySQL as a place for the people that I couldn't employ in Monty AB. And now SkySQL is renamed to MariaDB Corporation. But I will go to little more details into that. But that was kind of the short. So those who are very, very tired can go out now and while I continue. So the big reasons, or there's a couple of reasons for the success of MySQL. One of those was that they did it as free software. And the reason was that I have been using free software since 1984, when I got my first Unix machine. And I've been at lots of conferences about open source, but I always wanted to give something back to the community. But to be able to give something back to the community, in other words, release your code as open source, you need to be able to earn enough money that you can maintain it. Because back then, there were lots of small programs that was released as open source, and they died just because nobody was prepared to pay for that. So when we had the discussion that should we put out everything I have written during the last 15 years as open source, the discussion between me and David Axmark took about 5 minutes, and we concluded that if we release everything, we will not lose money. We don't know how much money we will make, but we will not lose money compared to what we did as software consulting back then. But we also did something smart, that we decided on a license that would guarantee that if we would become a big success, then there was a small portion of the users who would have to buy. And we did it by doing something called dual licensing. GoScript, that you have in most printers, was the first who was doing it. We were the one who actually showed how you should do it, and if you want to make money on open source. The problem with dual licenses is that it doesn't work for all projects. It works very good for infrastructure projects like MySQL that you embed in something else, and then people build upon us. So when we choose GPL as a license, this meant that anybody can use it freely in-house, you can distribute it, you can use it in any way you want, except that if you want to combine that with closed source software and distribute it, for example in Adobe or in a Cisco router or something similar. In that case, the companies very seldom want to publish all the code as open source, which GPL requires. So they come to us and ask for a license, and we gave them exactly the same code, but they had to pay for it. And during the lifetime of MySQL, we noticed that we got about 1 in 1,000 to pay, which some companies who are doing commercial closed software think is a bad deal. But for us, who we did know we will have millions, currently there is about 50 million installations of MySQL. If you get 1 in 1,000 to pay, it's a pretty good deal for a couple of guys from Scandinavia. I'm also doing a lot of advisement to companies about how to make money on open source. For those things that you can't embed, dual license doesn't work. So I and David come up with something we call business source that allows you to force a small fraction of your users to pay, while the other ones has the same freedoms that you normally have with open source. So from 95 to 2000, we grow from being me and David Axmark to 15 people. I handled all payments, all the things that you need to run a company. And we were a virtual company from day one, because I was in Finland, David Axmark was in Sweden, next guy we hired was in Yugoslavia, next was in Russia, next was in Germany, and so on. So we just hired the best people everywhere. And that's kind of the nicest part with the virtual company. You can just employ the best people. And when you open source, you very quickly learn who are the best people, because it's not about seeing at grades or anything else. You see them on the main list, the people who are helping each others, other people having problems, coming with patches, fixing bugs. So it was very easy for us to just approach the right people and say that, would you like to come and work with us? And that's how we grew to 15 people. The other part of the work was getting the name out. So I was the home sitting in the traditional cellar programming, while David went out to all the conferences in the world talking about MySQL. And that's kind of how we spread our workload. But I think that one of the key factors of getting MySQL popular was that I spent the first 5 years writing 30,000 emails, just helping people, starting with MySQL. If somebody had a question, I answered it. If it was a complex question, I created a manual entry and told them that here is the answer. We didn't need investors. We had no lawyers. And after the 3rd year, we started to be approached by investors. We actually had met some investors a year earlier just to see how does this investor thing work. But we didn't want to sell too early. And in '99, we were offered by an American company $50 million for MySQL back then, and then we had about 2 million users. Not that much income, but this was in the middle of the bubble. All companies was extremely high valued, and we did know that this dog shop that are selling dog food on the internet, it can't be worth $10 million or $100 million that some of those were. So we did know that something was wrong, and we didn't believe that the company who wanted to buy us actually was worth the 1 billion or a couple of billions that they were according to the stock market. So we decided that let's wait a little bit, and MySQL is not ready yet. Let's continue until it's good enough before we take in investors. And a couple of years later, 2000, I started with struggling with handling all these 15 people. Because I'm a programmer, I like to program. I try to still, when I'm not lecturing, do programming, and I would like to do about 50% of my time programming. So if you go to the Maria channel on Freenode, you will still find me there most of the times. And we also had lots of more customer demanding more things that we could do. We have a current group. Postgres was not really heard about after 2000, and they started to get some popularity. So we had two options: continue growing slowly, getting one person at a time, or taking investors and bootstrap us and actually be able to change the world. And in 2001, we took investors. Actually, we took in Morten Mikkos, who helped us find investors. And the reason we did that was because we thought this is the best for MySQL and the users of MySQL long term. Our idea was never to make business on open source, which many companies try to do now. But we wanted to use open source to make business. And the big difference is that if open source is first, that means that you have to follow the rules of being a good citizen and actually not change your code to be closed source on open core. The open source part is the fundamental thing. It's about changing the world, making a better place. And I love the fact that we come up with a way that 100,000 paid for all the convenience for everybody else. And we were able to give a really good database free to the world. So that is kind of why I started with MySQL and continue to do that. So with Sun, as I said earlier, I think Sun was the absolutely best place for MySQL. And the only thing that destroyed it was Oracle buying Sun only because they wanted to have MySQL and Java and a couple of products. They did tell the European Commission that we will not buy Sun if we don't get MySQL, because the European Commission actually told Oracle that they should spin out MySQL, because otherwise Oracle would get the monopoly. But they didn't want to do that. And by the way, I'm happy to take questions anytime. I'm not a talker, I'm a programmer. In that sense, a little like many of you, I don't like to be on stage. The only reason I'm here because when somebody asks me nicely, can you come and have a talk? And I have a hard time saying that. You could say that creating MySQL was because we actually wanted to make money. But the main point was that we wanted to make money enough that we continue doing what we were doing. With MariaDB, it was more about ensuring the legacy, ensuring that the product that has spent more than 30 years on wouldn't just die. It was also a question about ensuring that the really good technical people who worked with me a long time on MySQL would have a home, because I was really afraid that they will leave Oracle, go to lots of different companies, which basically would have killed MySQL. And also Oracle has never given any firm promises about the future of MySQL. And how can you trust somebody who don't want to give promises? And also trust a company who has, there's no logical reason whatsoever why they would like to have MySQL in a portfolio, because for every MySQL sales, they are losing money compared to Oracle 11 or 12G sales. So I used the money I got from Sun. I created a new company. This is also called Monty Program AB, like the first company I created. And instead of working with Sun, we started to work on MariaDB. We were still a virtual company, 20 employees from the start. And that's kind of the other benefits of virtual companies, that when the people left Oracle, they didn't need to do anything else than, instead of sending a paycheck request to Oracle, they just asked me to pay the money. So it was very easy movement from one to another. the problem when you do a fork of something that is GPL, there's no way you can sell licensings. And MySQL, the money we got in MySQL was 50% licensing and 50% support. Actually, a little bit more licensing. But when you talk with the investors, they want to have a 10x money back for what they put in. And if you only do services, they can never get that, ever. And that's why I did know that this is a company that is not something investors will be interested in, but let's instead focusing on saving MariaDB. And I was pretty sure back then that all these big companies, Google, Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, all the big ones, about 80% of the websites in the world are using MySQL. I thought that some of those would actually help me doing this, because this was not for money, this was actually for helping them. Almost nobody wanted to help me, but they just said, you got money from Sun, you will do this even if we don't pay you, so why should we pay you? But also to prove that this was not about money, I created a hacking business model together with Zach Grant, that is a model of a company who's owned by the employees. So with this new Monty program AB, I only owned 1/20th part of it. It was equally shared about among the employees. I also created a document how to create a company of equals. So if anybody you are planning to create a company and you have a group of friends and you said, then you basically have two choices. Somebody takes the lead and becomes the CEO and gets a bigger part of the company, or you create something that where everybody is equal. If you want to do something everybody equals, all the rules are on the net. You just search for the hacking business model and you will get exactly how we did it. And during these 4 years of Monty program AB, we did follow those rules exactly. So when we employed a new person, we basically said that here's your title, what you should do, your salary, and all the rules about how you are employed and what you should do, what you should report is in this public document. So in Monty program AB, I was able to hire all the critical core engineers who did know most about MySQL. And in that sense, I was able to save MySQL under the name MariaDB. I didn't, however, have enough money to hire all the other people that you need to create the working infrastructure, the salespeople, the trainers, the support people. That's why I was helping founding SkySQL, who is the home of all these people. I was able to find investors to this one. And we did join forces together. So until this, I had paid all the salaries for all the people in Monty program AB. We didn't have any customers for the first 3 years. Because usually when you are an open source company, but you get money from, if you can't sell licenses, you sell support. But the Sun salespeople, when Oracle announced that they will buy Sun, they went to all customers that ever bought MySQL and told them that Oracle will increase prices. You should buy a 3 or 5 year support contract now just to protect you against pricing crisis. And everybody did. So when I come up with MariaDB and said that maybe you want to have support from MySQL, we have the best people, they just said that, oh, they have a support contract, come back after 3 years. And in a normal company, that would just have been the debt of the company. But I put 4 million euros of my own money just paying salaries, getting us over this hurdle. But still, it was kind of hard to get people convinced that, can I really do this again? Is MariaDB something that will be there for the future? And I also needed some people to give me some money, so to kind of prove that we actually have a business. So I created the MariaDB Foundation because of 2 reasons. First, because this is a non-profit, and it would be easy for companies to donate money to. The other reason was that I didn't want what happened to MySQL ever happen to MariaDB. sometimes you learn from your mistakes. So the foundation owns, you're not going to throw me out, are you? I created a foundation that its own some part of the MariaDB trademark, especially the trademark of the server, which means that the foundation is the one who tells that this is the official MariaDB release. Anybody in the community can get rights to put code into this repository as long as you are good enough. For example, I can't give any code to Oracle and get into MySQL. I have no way to access the repository. I don't even know about the plans or anything else. MariaDB Foundation ensures that whatever happened to the MariaDB Corporation, the server will always be free. So that's why I can promise you that if you stop using MySQL and using MariaDB, there's no risk of the future that somebody else will buy it off and try to kill it. So what we do is that we work very tightly with community. If anybody you have a patch that you want to get into the server, we can either help you create the patch, or if you have the patch ready, we will review it, work with you to get it in, and then ensure that it gets in, if it is technically good enough. Currently we are 4 full-time members. We're going to work on a patch, very good. We have 4 full-time developers, 1 documentation writer, and the CEO work on the foundation. And the foundation, I wouldn't have been able to create the foundation if we wouldn't have Booking, SkySQL, and Parallels, sister company of Kronos, Automatic, Cinemax, and Visma. They helped me sponsor and actually creating the foundation. And actually this saved MariaDB in some sense. And we also always search for new sponsors. So a little bit about the MariaDB server itself. So how many here are using MySQL? Okay, and how many are using MariaDB or have used it? Okay, so actually 1/3 of the one. So the good news, it's like that to throw out MySQL and install a better free database that is 100% compatible. It just works. So we can ask those persons over there that using MariaDB, when you switch from MySQL to MariaDB, did you have any problems at all? And I have asked that in 30 different conferences over the last 5 years. Not one have had a problem. And I think that's good confidence that it actually is that easy to switch. We are more open. We have done 5 releases. The 6th is just coming out. So we have kind of proved that we actually can take over MySQL. But even with 5.3 and 5.5, there were still people who didn't really believe that can we actually continue working us. And within Oracle, people were saying that Monty's money will run out soon, so we can just ignore him. So a little bit about the releases for those few who were using MySQL. So basically, we had the first one just to do cleanups. In 5.2, we took lots of things from the community, added that to MariaDB. In 5.3, we did lots of things on the optimizer. The full optimizer team from MySQL left, worked on MariaDB, and we had the most advanced optimizer of all the different MySQL versions. And then we merged 5.3 with 5.5. With 10.0, we added parallel application and multi-source global transaction ID so that you can put up very complex replication scenarios that works. And 10.1 that is now coming, we have a multi-master and we have strong encryption. So for those who are interested about security, we can actually provide stronger security than you can get with Oracle database today. And the question that, what was the steps that actually allowed me to succeed with MariaDB? Because I can prove kind of that we did succeed. So this was the first slide that created by Mark Callahan from Facebook for 5.3 that showed that we actually are fixing critical things that exist in MySQL. So MySQL had a bug, and it had a bug for seven years, that it didn't scale. So basically, when you add replicas to your master, the yellow round line shows that it doesn't scale at all. Facebook, who is big MySQL user, tried to fix it, so they did a patch, and that's the red line, and then they come to us and asked, can we do it better? And Christian Nielsen did this blue line that is almost perfect scaling, basically fixing a bug in MariaDB. We also have added a lot of things about NoSQL into MariaDB to be able to handle unstructured data. One of the reasons that people started to talk about NoSQL some 7 years ago was actually that the MySQL replication was not fast enough. No replication is faster, that the slaves are faster than the master. So in most cases we can actually keep up. We couldn't do that until MariaDB 10. But we also added a lot of interesting things to the interfaces to be able to do NoSQL. So when I talked earlier that in '99 we were in the bubble of too many companies with too high valuation, too many investors putting in too much money without understanding what the Linux and the open source things is about. We are exactly in a bubble now. Look at all the evaluation for Snapshot, WhatsApp, MongoDB. They are way out of proportion compared to the money that they ever can bring in. So I believe that we are in the bubble, and within let's say 2-3 years, we will see the valuation of this company going down drastically, and this multi-billion-dollar valuation of something that is not worth anything will kind of disappear. But anyway, so we added something like called dynamic columns in MariaDB 5.3. This was something I wanted to do for 5 years. Didn't really have time to do it. And the reason I really got it done because we have OSCON, one of the biggest open source conferences in US. They asked me for a talk. And I said I had this idea about dynamic columns that would kind of solve the same thing as NoSQL in MariaDB. And accepted the talk, so I actually had to write the feature to be able to hold the talk. And this is very easy. We have basically added 7 functions that allows you to store columns within a column. And one of the reasons we did that, we wanted to also add interfaces to things like Cassandra and LevelDB, which are NoSQL engines. So we have no storage engines for those, so you can use MariaDB to join Cassandra, LevelDB, Oracle, Postgres, and MySQL in the same query. It's kind of cool. We also are trying to ensure that all those things that Oracle makes closed source, we do open source in MariaDB. So one of the first things that Oracle made closed source was the trade pool, and we added that to MariaDB, and this solves this problem that when you get more and more users, like in the end you have 4,000 simultaneous users, MySQL stops to scale because all the time goes to swapping processes instead of actually doing something. And by having a pool where instead of having 4,000 threads, you only have 64 threads doing all the work, you can actually get much better performance. And we know of websites who just switched this on and got 2 to 4 times improvements with one option. If somebody is interested to work with open source, and especially with open source database, there's lots of things you can do, not only translating documentation to Russia, actually also be participating on the code level. But when it comes to open source and participating, you shouldn't just come in and do something that you think that somebody else would like to have done. You need to do something that you will benefit of. And that's kind of the reason that open source project grows. It's not because there's lots of volunteers. There are volunteers who are actually expanding the product for their own needs. And instead of trying to maintain a patch set of their own, it's easier to give back to the community. And that's why open source works and grows. So if you have a need where you think that MariaDB is just almost good enough, but it's missing something, please connect with me and let's work together to add those functionality that you need. You get a better product, I get a better product, and everybody else is happy. I also need to mention the Connect Storage engine because of two reasons. First, it's a really, really cool engine, allows you to connect with lots of other sources. The other thing is that what happened with all programmers, they just don't disappear, they continue to code. Oliver Bertrand is over 80, still coding and doing amazing things with very little resources. So, what was the really challenges of taking over MySQL? It was really hard to do all the things that you need to do in a project. It's not only about the team, but you also have to create documentation, forums, build systems. You have to ensure it works on all operating systems. We have to ensure that for every feature that I added MySQL, we merge and add it or improve it on MariaDB. And also creating a developer community that can work on it. And then you need to find a business model not based on licenses. For me, the business model was creating the MariaDB Foundation. And that actually helped me to get MariaDB out. And we also created a free MariaDB documentation that is not only documentation, it's knowledge base. You can go in any place and ask and try to find information that you need. And if it's not there, you can just ask at that place where the documentation should have been, and we will add it. Usually we have never more than 10 open questions at a time. So we're very quickly to fix and add things. And you can also be a part of the team to add that. And it's not only a project by me on my team. There's lots of other people involved. And here's some statistics. Haven't updated them recently, but still is reasonably accurate. And Google has also employed people working on MariaDB code. And we are working with some other companies also doing that. And actually I want to come to this side. So it was basically in October 2012, I was then a little bit worried at how long can I finance this myself. So I created a foundation and I then went to Wikipedia, who had a very special version of MySQL that patched it for years to just fulfill Wikipedia's requirement. So, and I did know that they were very positive about my work on MariaDB. So I went there, they were friends of mine, I said that, okay, let's make a deal. If you try to run Wikipedia on MariaDB, we will give you free support and fix anything that you find. They said, okay, let's try. And then they come back 1 month later, said that, no, they have moved the English version to MariaDB. We have made a public blog about it, and it's performing much better than the patched version of MySQL, which was a very old version that they thought that they would never be able to upgrade from. And this was when the people started to really notice MariaDB. And I could see that at conferences that was kind of what waking people up. And then in January, March, I have been also very friendly to distributions. Most of the distributions, Fedora, OpenSUSE, Slackware, Chakra Linux, Arch Linux, say that they will switch to MariaDB. They will push out MySQL. And in June, Red Hat announced that they will move MariaDB into Red Hat Enterprise, and MySQL is optional. And then some months later, even DB and Ubuntu is now including MariaDB. So in all major distributions, you have MariaDB. In most of them, we are default. And in many of those, MySQL doesn't exist anymore. So I think that that means that at least we have done something right, and we are winning. So reasons to switch to MariaDB today is that there's no reason whatsoever to use MySQL. We are much more farther in development, we have much more features, we are much more secure, and we are committed to do work on open source and do business on, based on open source and not the other way around. So I think it's basically my last slide, so time for questions. And while you think about the questions, I can just say that the reason MySQL was successful was that we were using it from the start. It was created for our own needs, to solve our own problems. And when we gave it out as free software, lots of other people had the same problems as we had, and we were the solution for their problems. And everything else that we did just helped emphasize that. So.
Ну а теперь начинается самое интересное. Прекрасная возможность задать вопросы.
Добрый день, меня зовут Владимир Молодков, родился в КФУ. Меня интересует ваша схема бизнес-лицензий, смесь open source и бизнес, то есть GPL для всех и специальная лицензия покупная для тех, кто хочет иметь закрытый код. Для того, чтобы принимать патчи...
Commercial policy, commercial licensing policy, when the companies that you sell commercial license to want to make some patch to the code base of MySQL, what happens with the intellectual property on these patches? So, how are these patches distributed?
У вас что-либо похожее было?
Okay, so normally when you give to any open source project a patch, either you have to give it under the same license as the code base, or if you have a commercial product with the same code base like we had with MySQL, what we required you to do is basically sign over the patch with shared copyright license, so that you don't lose anything, but we get the right to use anything with our copy, and then we include it in the open source version, because we always had the open source version and the closed source version the same. With MariaDB, you have two options. You can either give the foundation right to the code, or you just give it under BSD, in which case we're happy to include it. But the main thing here is that if you're doing a commercial product that is based on open source one, you need to get all the rights so that you can satisfy your commercial clients. I think that is good as long as the commercial offering and the open source offering are the same. Then I think you are following the spirit. You are getting companies to pay for your open source work, and you need to have that. You can never do a business with open source when you want to compete with other development companies if you are not forcing a part of your community to pay. You can do a very successful service business, but you can't compete with Microsoft or Oracle by just doing services, because with services you need 10 service people to pay for one engineer. So if you want to have 20 engineers like we have, you need to have 200 support persons. You can never get that economically done. So open source is a better way to develop software, but if you want a commercial aspect, you either have to use dual licenses or business source, or open core, but open core is basically a closed source solution, so I don't advocate that.
Thank you for the great talk. It's always a great boost for personal motivation to hear success stories from big companies like yours. Such, everybody knows you. But sometimes even a bigger boost for personal motivation is to hear about fails. Can you name this one, maybe greatest personal fail you did in your professional career, which maybe you can prevent the young people sitting here from doing?
So when it comes to failure, I don't like when people are thinking that if I would have known what happened, in that case I would have done differently. Because then you are predicting the future. You are looking at with the knowledge of the future. But there's something that you should be able to predict. Once we did basically many things extremely right. We waited in investment until time was right, so we only had to give out 10% of the company instead of 50% that many new companies have to do. The virtual environment was perfect. So the first big failure was that we didn't buy InnoDB soon enough. And in this case, I did trust Heikki Tuuri, the innovator of InnoDB, who promised me that he would never sell to Oracle. And my failure for trusting him. And but he had his reason, but he still should have come to me and said, hey, let's discuss this. So I'm a little bit mad with him, I'm mad with myself for letting that happen. The other part that I never thought that could happen. I never thought that MySQL would come into hands for somebody who didn't have the best interest of MySQL hands. And if I would have thought about that, then I would have changed the license. Instead of having it as GPL, I would have a license that says, be a GPL, but after 5 years or 3 years, we will become BSD. If that, we would have that in the license text, Oracle never would have wanted to buy MySQL because they could never have contended. So that was kind of the two big mistakes we did.
Ваше отношение к объектным базам данных и объектно-ориентированным системам управления базами данных. Видите ли вы потребность в них?
What is your view on object-oriented databases, and what steps do you make towards support of object-oriented databases in MariaDB?
Вашей СУБД возможности работы с объектно-ориентированными базами данных.
We have had friends talking with me about object-oriented databases since 88. They even did object-oriented version of Unireg back then. The problem with object-oriented databases is there's not a common interface that works over all of them. I never have claimed that SQL is a really good language. I think actually for inserts and updates and maintenance, it's a horrible language. But for doing finding data, it's really, really good language that is easy to embed. And the nice thing with SQL is that you have connectors that works everywhere. You can export, import your data between very different databases. And with object-oriented database, you can't do that. So you lose all the benefits of not getting a lock-in. So if MariaDB, by some strange coincidence, would not be good enough for you, you can either move storage engine or you can move to another SQL and still save a big part of the development of efforts. If you're stuck with object-oriented database, you will stuck with the interface and it's almost impossible to get out from there to another one. And so that's not the failure in the object-oriented database world, but more failure in the infrastructure that is not as rich as the one with SQL.
Why did you leave university at 19? Are you think that universities aren't useful for programmers?
So when I started university in 1981, there were no computer classes, no informatics, nothing. The only thing we had that gave you some access to computers was technical physics. And I started with that one, but after 2 years, I was also working full-time at Tapiola, and actually started to create the database. And I kind of noticed that I did learn 2 algorithms when it comes to computers during those 2 years, but most of the courses were something that I had no interest of. And I also was supporting a family, and these guys in Sweden started to demand more and more time with me. We got more and more customers. So I kind of concluded that for me, there's not so much that I can learn from the university just because we didn't have courses back then yet. And the other part was that I was earning more money than I thought that I could actually get if I would have stopped earning money, going to university, finish it, and then continue. So it was most of my other friends from the university, we still see each other many times a year, and one of the few who didn't graduate.
Hi Monty, honored to be the thanks for the talk. Only one question. Did you know other products can compete with MariaDB? Do you know powerful open source analog? No.
Linux is kind of a similar story, a little bit different because Linux Torvalds didn't want to make a commercial product of Linux. But I mean, competitor to MariaDB, you have Postgres, but they never had a company behind them. They never had something that could guarantee that bugs are really fixed. You can actually pay for features. So I think that MariaDB and MySQL is more popular than Postgres just because we had a company behind it and we actually have a much more friendly attitude to newcomers. But looking at other open source projects, PHP is a good success, big success. Rasmus Lerdorf is a good friend of mine, but he also didn't want to make money on the product itself. So the problem was that when I started with MySQL, there were almost no products that made money on open source because people hadn't come up with how to do it. We kind of showed them the way. And that made us unique in the beginning, that we were not only open source people, we were also entrepreneurs, and we combined those two to get the best of both.
What do you think about Firebird?
I mean, Firebird, I mean, I know the guy who wrote Firebird. I have met him many times. He even worked for us for a while. But there's no commercial interest around it. And if you look at the web today, 80% of the websites are running on MySQL and MariaDB. If you want to, and there's no reason really to run something else, except if you want to expand the database with new types and everything else. Postgres is more designed for expansion. But if you just want to be a user, MySQL MariaDB is the best that you have that is free. And especially MariaDB, of course.
Thanks.
Hi. Thank you very much for your speech. It was really interesting, and I have only 3 very small questions. So you told that when you started to run a business, there were some things you have to do except programming. So you like programming, you program all the time, and as your business grows, you have to deal with some legal things and things like that. So did you like it, and how did you cope? Yeah.
And so the one reason we took investors, I wanted to get rid of all this management. I'm a programmer. In many companies, the founders are then rising up and become manager, and they rise until they're incompetent. I didn't want to do that. I wanted to be a programmer. So with MySQL, I always hired people above me. So I kind of was the CTO, but I hired the CEO over me and CFO and all the other people. And the whole management team eventually moved from Finland to US, but I stayed in Finland because my friends were there and relatives. So why move when you have a virtual organization where you don't have to move?
So you try to avoid anything with this?
I try to stay in the place where I at least show that I have a little bit of capabilities.
Do you have any tricks while you work? So any tricks that can improve your efficiency? So you stand up very early, drink lots of water, or things like that?
Multiplying water with that water. But the main trick is that I noticed that I'm working best in the winter when it's cold outside and there's nothing else to do, everybody else is asleep. Then you can start doing all these crazy algorithms and test those that you don't have time otherwise when people are interrupting you the whole time.
Меня зовут Денис, и вопрос следующий. Вам хорошо сказали, что большие...
The forward told a lot about big data, and the question is, what are the problems, fundamental problems that disturb us from working with big data efficiently? Is it a lack of algorithms, or a lack of maybe new computer architectures, or lack of new database management systems?
Создание принципиально другой архитектуры компьютера, или, может быть, вообще создание принципиально других компьютеров?
So I do have a little bit different opinion of big data as somebody else or many else. Back then, when I worked on the Sun microsystem with 24 mega memory, we were working with big data. It just took us 1 hour each month to get in all the data from all the Swedish gas stations and all the customer receipts. I've seen things grow for big companies. For most cases, big data isn't big data. You can store them in a hard disk. There's very few companies who have look at all the business, all transactions, everything that goes over 1 terabyte. It's only when you start to look at people, how they behave on the net and on all things on the mobile devices and want to store everything that you go into big data. That is a little bit more tricky to maintain. But there's very few companies who needs that. If you go work for most of the companies today, maybe exception Google and Facebook, you will be able to store that in the hard drive now and for the next 10 years. You will have 60 terabytes hard drives in a few years. That's big data for most companies. Not all, but for most. So the question is that why do we focus so much about something that only maybe the 1,000 biggest companies in the world needs? Because it's a hype. People want to work on something that sounds big, but it isn't. So the biggest problem actually with databases is not storing things or retrieving things. It's when something goes bad. If you have a 60 terabyte disk that is not SSDs, and you get a failure with one sector destroyed, it may take you 1 month to fix. So the big problem is actually not so much the big data itself. It's a question about doing backups. So you never have to do recovery. And that I see as the biggest problem. So I'm involved in in a couple of projects with big data. So the MySQL was used to store the first version of the human genome, the DNA. That was used for MySQL. And now I'm working with Stanford University to store data of all pictures that they are going to take for the universe, and they are going to store some 100 or 1,000 petabytes in MariaDB. So that's big data, but not everybody needs to access those.
Thank you for your speech. It was great, and a very simple question: how you work? Are you prepared to work 5 days a week and have your small holidays, or are you prepared to work, for example, 3 or 4 months and then take you big, great holidays?
So basically I work almost all the time, but what I do is that when I work from home, and I worked from home since '82. So one of the ways that you see other people, and you just not the walls of your cellar and your wife who is starting to get crazy, is that you invite people to dinner. So and when you have dinner, you usually have a little bit of alcohol, and that also means that the next days I take it easy. And the other thing that actually human interaction helps. And the other thing is that when I travel to different countries, I try to take, especially long trips, I try to take 1 or 2 days vacation before and after. Usually I also socialize and meet customers, but that's more about dinner and kind of friendly talk. So just to get a little bit more of the trips. And then once a year we go to some exotic place with the family. So I've been to Madagascar, Galapagos. Next year we are planning to go to Africa and climb some of the big mountains there. Kilimanjaro actually. So the dream is to climb up Kilimanjaro and then take a balloon down.
Have you considered Altai, Russian mountains?
No.
Do you like your vacation in Russia?
I have been to Russia many times and I enjoy the places. Friendly people, and they take usually very good care of me. Sometimes too good care of me.
Thank you. It was a really awesome lecture. Is there the way which can help me to contact you?
So if you go to the knowledge base, basically MariaDB.org, and you see how to participate in a project, there you have the channel we are on IRC, all the email addresses, how to participate. The slides will be available. I hope that somebody can give them out. You have my contact details there too. So if you want to participate in a project or talk about how to do a business, I'm available.
Thank you. Hello, Michael. How do you think, what helped you become successful? Was it your passion towards the subject? Was it your talents? Was it your family? Or was it your hard work? Or all together?
A little about both, but the question is that why did Linux, Torvalds, and me succeed with open source? And I believe is that because we have, from Finnish culture, we are a little bit shy. We are trying to treat people like we would like to be treated. So when we started with the open source project and we started to communicate, I believe that we have a style that we are not offending anybody, especially because English is not our native language. We're very careful about what we are saying. And we have been able to encourage people to be part of the project. And at least in the early days, I believe that that was one of the success with MySQL, at least. I don't like strong words. There were, back then, lots of flame words on emails on different projects. I killed all of those. I said that you can't have bad words. If somebody attacked somebody else for something, I emailed both of those and said that you need to stop arguing. If you want to argue, don't do it in public, and don't offend other people because of your beliefs. You can question their beliefs, but don't offend them. And we were able to create this very friendly spirit on the email lists. And I think that was kind of the success for us compared to other projects that failed. If you look at the open source project that was before Linux, you had the different BSDs. You had BSD, BSDI, OpenBSD, FreeBSD. That was basically a free operating system before Linux. That one didn't succeed because it was very hard for somebody to be part of the project. The founders and the one who lead the project, they were, if you were not the smartest person in the world, they basically kicked you out because you asked stupid questions. And we were more friendly to the environment than they were. So Linux succeeded just because these other guys just argued instead of doing things.
Hello, and thank you for your speech. Is there any essential advice that you want to give to beginning developers?
To creating a company or a product?
Creating a company.
This slide.
Yes.
So basically you need to do something that you know about, something that you solve a problem for yourself, you know that you solve it good, it worked for you, and hope that lots of other people have the same need. Many of the companies that fails are people who are thinking that that's a problem, let's solve that. But they don't know what is the really problem. They're trying to solve it, but they're not grasping the problem, and then they fail. So if I would today start to look at let's say I would be 16 again and wanted to solve something that is done really horribly now, it's home automation. So for the money I got from Sun, I put most of it both in MariaDB and creating a new house for myself. So if everything else would go bad, at least I would have a house. But it was a nice house with full home automation. But the system is really broken. It's really horrible to program. Something that should take you 1 hour to do takes 1 or 2 days. So that's something I see. That's a problem. It's horrible for the end user. I would fix it. So something similar, something that you experience to be a problem. Solve that, and when you're happy with it, and it's so easy to use that your girlfriend can use it and enjoy using it, then you know that you have a success.
Thank you, sir.
У меня такой к вам вопрос. 20 человек — это достаточно большой.
How did you manage the time zone difference, the organizational questions? How did you solve some conflicts probably raised inside this?
Как вам удавалось координировать между собой?
So we created the team by just hiring people all over the places. And in most cases, I didn't know if what kind of degree this person had, is he man or female or much of a background. The only thing I did know about his skills of either developing or communicating. So we got a very distributed, very different team. And to be able to keep them in place and actually get the things forward, we ensured a couple of things. We ensured that we have a meeting for all the developers 2 times a year, so you can actually meet and see what the other person looks like. Because otherwise we found out that it's very easy to have a really heated argument with somebody you never met. But if you have met that person and you can put a face in front of you and a voice when you read his emails, things become much more friendly. We also had some requirements for people to ensure that what they were doing. First, they had to be on IRC the whole time. So the Maria /Maria IRC channel of Freenode, all developers who work on MariaDB and they work either from the Foundation or the MariaDB Corporation are required to be there. So anybody can be able to join us under the same freedom and possibilities that all the native developers have. So that way we can see that people are working, because if I ask a question and they are supposed to be working, I need to get an answer relatively soon. The other thing is that each week we require them to send a list of what they did last week and what they plan to do next week. So you can check what they are working on, are they working on the right things, and what the plans are. And then we had phone conversations when necessary. But that was it.
I know that a lot of students make some experiments with open source, but mostly it relates to publishing some of their source code on GitHub. So publishing some utility libraries, publishing their study projects, games, some other projects. What advice can you give to turn this student open source project into something bigger? For example, gathering community around such projects.
Yeah, so usually it's much easier to participate with something else that already exists, because then you can participate some time, go back from it, and then continue with it. The problem we had with before MySQL that we didn't find any project that we could give out that we actually could afford to maintain. And that's basically the problem for a student. You put something on GitHub that you did as a part of a course, and then it's forgotten and nobody will ever look at it. And the best way to get things go further is to actually creating something for a company who actually are willing to pay you for your work. And at the same time, you'd make agreement with the company that I will also have the right to publish the code as open source. And then you have something you can build on. That's what I did with my early work. I always ensure that whatever code I do, I have a shared copyright of it. So I could continue to use the same code in the next project and next project and next project. So it's more a question about finding a business model or finding a group of persons who have a business model who can then continue with you, for you.
Thank you.
How to decide what should be free in core product and what should be in paid plugins, add-ons?
If you have a model that you have some part free and some part paid for, that's basically open core model. And it's been a very popular model propagated by some companies. I don't believe in that, because as an end user, if I'm depending on one single of your closed source modules, your whole product is closed source for me. All the benefits I have from open source products disappears. I'm locked with one vendor. I can't fix bugs. I can't extend the product. I can't do anything that I expect as for the benefits of open source. So in this case, I would just see you as a closed source product, even if you have only one module that is closed source. So that's why we have created business source that basically allows you to have everything open, but still you are able to force a small portion of your community to pay. So look for business source. You will find 2 or 3 articles, including 2 academic articles that I've written on that. That may solve your problem. Otherwise, if you can't, if that doesn't work for you, the only other option that you have is that when you go out with your product, you make it very clear to your community that this is what we do free. It should be good enough for most. And these are some commercial modules that we are adding that only a fraction of the community will need. And you will promise that you will never make any part of what the community needs for closed source. And you need to get people to trust you, because in open source, it's not money that people are paying you. They're paying you with trust. And in the sense that they recommended you to others, and they're using you, and they can even buy services from you. But if you betray the trust, you lose everything. So, and the best way to betray the trust is basically changing a license from something free to something less free, especially if it's closed source. And I've seen lots of companies who are using open core, and then the management says that we don't earn enough money. Let's make also this thing closed source. And that is kind of usually the downfall of companies. If you go in business source, you never had a problem because you can have everything open. Or you are licensing if that works.
Now, one of the main goals of North-Swiss State University is getting to 100 the best university rating. What do you think about university rating and about this goal?
I don't know, I know so much about university and ratings, but I approve of anything that makes the university better for the students. And of course, the higher ratings, I do expect that also will provide you with better lectures and better people coming here and tell you how to run your life.